meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Thank you all for being here. Council, I know it was a commitment to take off today and tomorrow, but we've got 100% attendance, and I'm very grateful for that. And I know the mayor and Mr. Rice are as well. So I think most of you have an agenda in front of you. We'll have 2 days of these. Lord willing, the weather doesn't keep us from tomorrow, but for sure today we'll be in here until 3 or 4 o'clock talking about the budget. And just kind of laying some groundwork on what we'll be hearing today is, I think it's important to note this isn't a budget proposal from the mayor. We're not to that point yet. The mayor and his office are continuing to work with the finance department and department heads on what the proposal that he will give to the council for consideration will look like. So what we're going to hear today and tomorrow are summaries, if you will, high-level summaries of needs, and I would anticipate some wants and desires in there as well on what they would like the Finance Committee and Council to consider as we prepare to get the final budget proposal from the mayor by the end of January, I think, is the goal there. So, Mr. Rice, thank you for putting together the schedule and having everyone here. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Light, and we appreciate everybody participating. We appreciate the return of budget hearings so that we have an opportunity to transparently present the priorities and imperatives of our various city departments to the council, but also to the public as we work through the formulation of the mayor's budget. And the mayor will be in and out with us throughout the scheduled hearings, but he has a few prior commitments. Had to be at the chamber this morning at 8:30, so he'll visit with us as his schedule allows. Dr. Lopez is going to open with a very broad overview of the City of Hoover's budget process, our general fund, our capital fund, some of our special revenue funds, so that the members of council and also members of the public have an understanding of some of the mechanics that go into our budget formulation. So if there are no questions from council to start with, we'll go ahead and introduce Dr. Lopez.
Good morning, thank you. I'm going to spend the first few minutes this time, actually, since some of you guys are new, just kind of give you a good overview of what I call probably the top 4 reasons I think the City of Hoover has budget success, and just kind of explain our process and how it's worked in the past for us to give you guys a good understanding of that. And then we spend the last part of this hour going through some specifics, some broad specifics of the budget as it stands with all requests that have been submitted. And as was said, this does not include any cuts, but it shows you kind of where we are, and then we'll work toward that to present a balanced budget to you guys. So, with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. And feel free to interrupt me anytime if something doesn't make sense or if you have any questions. As I mentioned, I think, honestly, if you look at it across the state or even across the country, I think these several things I'm going to mention right here, some of these are different than a lot of other entities, governmental entities do, but these are going to be what lead to our financial soundness, I believe. And it's a conservative approach. And so just in general, the 4 things that we're going to talk about, one, which is probably more utilized with other entities than the other ones, is that the payroll surplus due to vacancies that occur throughout the year. Some entities actually assume and impute an amount of vacancies in the year. The City of Hoover does not do that. We assume that we're going to have full employment. That's the most conservative approach, so we don't get caught at the end of the year, and we can always be assured we'll never have full employment, but we can always be assured we'll have a little bit of a balance. So that's one thing we'll talk about briefly. Also, separating our general fund that roll to the general fund. So we have a main general fund, we'll just call it Fund 101, and then we have multiple other 100 range funds that roll into the general fund on the financial report. And so there are 3 of these funds that we separate out, and we'll talk about why we do that a little bit and how that helps. And the fleet, our fleet costs, our information technology costs, and building services. And then also, one that I think some of you guys probably have heard about, especially since we've recently done a budget amendment, our general fund transfer to the capital projects fund that we kind of do at the end of each year, and we'll talk about that. And then finally, I want to mention our use of internal service funds and how that has helped to smooth our expenses and the effect that it has on the general fund, and has helped us to have a balanced general fund over the years. So, okay, so in terms of the payroll surplus due to vacancies, obviously, this was pretty self-explanatory. If if we have people that leave during the year, obviously it takes time to hire the new person. So there's gonna be those times that you have those months or those weeks or whatever it takes that the person's not working, so you don't have full employment. Basically, as I mentioned, we do not assume an amount that's gonna be vacant. We go ahead and budget the full position for the whole year, and then at the end of the year, we basically assume those savings. And so where that helps is obviously revenue projections. If revenue projections were ever did not meet our projection, then that would actually help to compensate for that somewhat. So, so apart from any unexpected expenditures, for instance, it's always possible people would spend more in overtime than what was budgeted. It's an automatic safety net, and that's one reason we do that. I always bring this up because there are cities, and I hear them, and they do this every year, and they have been caught short of doing that. As far as separating the general funds that roll into the general fund, so again, we're talking about examples are fleet, information technology, and building services. If you look at those areas, there are a lot of times that we can have expenses in those areas, and they're one-time costs, so they're not ongoing costs. For instance, if I get a new computer this year, more than likely I do not need a new computer next year, but maybe another department needs new computers. And so what we do is we create we'll call the IT fund is like a Fund 117. And so we pull that out. It still lets you to have individual department tracking. So if finance asks for 10 computers this year, we put it in finance's budget in this fund. But because of separating that out, it makes it easy at the end of the year. We're going to remove those 10 computers and you're starting at zero again. Then we get the new requests in for the year, and maybe next year it's building inspections needs 10 computers. And so we'll fund that. And so if we put it in their normal budget, a lot of times it gets lost, and then it just builds and builds and builds, and your operating costs are not levelized, but they just continue to increase more than they really have to. So that's one reason we do that. Same thing with fleet. We may have certain items each year. Obviously, there can be ongoing costs, like fuel. You're going to have that every year. You're going to have your fleet parts and things. But any of these one-time things, same thing with building services. You're paying utilities every year, but there may be certain things that we're repairing and maintaining that we wouldn't have to repair and maintain every year. It's just a fix. So that allows us to do that. It provides an account structure for one-time items to be budgeted and easily removed in subsequent years. Obviously, if we had an item that qualified to be paid for out of a special revenue fund or the capital projects fund, we would go ahead and fund it out of that instead of here. But for the most part, these are where these costs will be. Now, the other benefit of that, fleet, if you can have all of your budget that you're dealing with as a department in one place, it also helps to manage that. So I don't have to go to everybody's different department in all these different areas. I have this one fund for the most part that I can focus on what my fleet items are, or what my IT items are. So from the department head perspective, in dealing with those, it's more centralized. But at the same time, departments have their individual requests. So the next page just kind of talks about a little bit what I've talked about, the kind of things that fall in here. In fleet, anything that runs on fuel is considered something that would fall in this fund. Your IT could be your software, your hardware, your monitors, your printers, your scanners, all that kind of stuff would fall in here. And this is assuming it doesn't reach a capitalization threshold. And then also, if you're getting new furniture in here for building services, obviously I don't need new furniture every year, and so forth. So the third area I think that's a budget success for the city of Hoover is going to be our long-term financial planning and budgeting. And this is I think a very critical to our success to this point, and I'm not sure there are many other entities that do what we do. But basically, the city of Hoover reserves fund balance for the project length budget. Now, what this means is there are many projects, capital projects that we undertake, especially roads. We even have roads still on the book that started in 2000. If AlDOT's involved, it's going to be forever. But anyway, for the most part, they don't last that long. But say we have a project, for instance, like the City Hall renovation that we did. We start in fiscal 15, maybe planning it. Fiscal 16, we're actually constructing it, and then maybe we run some over in fiscal 17. We go ahead on our projects, and if we estimate it's going to cost okay that project to move forward. So we don't fund only the estimate of what we think is going to be due that first year or due the second year. We can go ahead and fund what we think it's going to be. Now, it's always possible that the project will come over that estimate. We have to deal with that, but we work with our best known information. So the reason this is important is it ensures that the project is completed, and when it's completed, the funding is available. And the best example to give why this is important is because of when economic downturns occur. And one example of this is that back in 2007, 2008, when we had the economic downturn, I don't know how many of you know, but the city of Hoover, in our general fund revenue, basically in a year's time, we lost almost $10 million. That was huge. That's about 10% of our revenue. And when you're dealing with losing $10 million, and guess what? That's right at the time that the Municipal Drive relocation project came due, and Aldott wanted their check finally. And so you're talking $1.5–2 million. Well, that's kind of hard to come up with if you've just lost $10 million. But because we had already funded our project 100%, we had no problem going ahead and having that money set aside, and we were able to do that. And so again, it's a conservative approach, but it helps to assure that we are going to maintain and have the ability to maintain and meet those payments as they come due. So that's the level of funding, and that we do the project link approval. And let me just say this too about the project link approval. It's good, I think, too, if we can encourage our departments to think that way. A lot of times we can think, well, this engineering's only going to cost $50,000. We do that, and then you do something else. This way, it gets them thinking broadly. Let's think comprehensively, big picture. Let's not, So, would you do the same project for $200,000, or if it costs $500,000? And so, in full disclosure to you guys, when you're making decisions, you can see what it's truly, hopefully, going to cost. So, and then in terms of how we fund it, since fiscal 2007, the city has transferred all excess net change in fund balance of $100,000 in the general fund to the capital projects fund. And basically, when we started this in 2007, it was $31 million, our general fund balance. We felt that at the time that was a very healthy fund balance. And so we wanted to go, and at the end of each year, just to show we were adding something, we basically arbitrarily chose the $100,000. And then everything else we transferred to the capital projects fund. So in the last 10 years that we've increased the general fund. Now at the end of this year it's going to be $32 million. But the reason that helps us is we're able to move to the capital projects fund. We have lots of capital needs, and we're able to fund those capital needs with basically cash and not the borrowing money to pay for those, for all those items. So that's been a process we've done every year, like I said, for the last basically 10 years. And if you look at the next slide, you'll see an example just that kind of shows that this is from 2007 when we started. And it's kind of hard to see that, but just kind of look at the graph and know that in the first year we did it in 2007 is about $8 million. And you can see that it went down. You can see the economic downturn years. We didn't have as much those years, right? And then really in since 2013 to 2015, it kind of had gone back up. In 2015, that was our biggest year with surplus, over 16 million. And then as we talked about the other night, now we're looking at for fiscal 16, we estimate this number is going to be 14 million. So it's kind of going back down a little bit. And I truly believe that number will come even further with the actual fiscal 17 budget. Will come down because we have a lot of one-time expenses coming due in 17 before.
Dr. Lopez, can I ask a question real quick? When we're funding for project completion, how much do we inflate those prices to make sure that we're being conservative with our estimates?
Honestly, we're relying on the department to do that, and so I think that would be a question on department by department. Now, obviously, we don't like to do amendments for the fun of it, but at the same time, we don't want to put overinflation. We don't want to overinflate it either. So we try to have that balance in there. But sometimes it's hard to say because sometimes depending on the time of the year you do something might be cheaper because it's slow for someone bidding on a project, and sometimes it might be more if
manages the majority of the large projects, about moving to more of a quotation basis for our budget estimates. A lot of those things have been determined internally, and so we think we can narrow that in a little bit more using external quotations to try to help drive our capital budget projections.
Dr. Lopez, on the general fund, I think I'm correct in saying this, the state, if you exceed a certain amount, will reassess your tax base and try to bring that down. So there's a penalty if we do go above a certain amount in the general fund?
No.
There's not?
The state doesn't do anything with our finances,
Okay.
so we don't have to worry about that.
So there's not a transference as far as that goes. If we could up that threshold if we wanted to, or lower it, or
Sure.
than that. Okay.
Absolutely, yes. So anyway, and as I said, so if you add the 16 in on here, once we finish it, it'll be probably around $14 million. So, and then on the next slide, just kind of sums what we're talking about. So the benefits of transferring the change in general fund balance in excess of $100,000. First, just to recap, it ensures that funding is available for multi-year capital projects, despite any economic situation when the bill comes due. It does continue a small increase to the general fund. So as our general fund revenues grow, we're still at least increasing that somewhat. It allows us to maintain a strong financial position, and it facilitates preventing overextending commitments, because we would hate to like have a bunch of partial projects approved, but then when they all came due, we couldn't fund them. So anyway, okay, so then in terms of internal service funds, I thought it would be important just to kind of give you guys a little bit of overview of this, just to understand how this has helped smoothing on the general fund expenditures, because really our general fund is the main fund, and we want it to be self-sufficient, and so anything we can do to kind of smooth expenses in there, we're going to try to do that. So we started this back in 2007 with our workers' compensation. So at the time, we're going to talk about workers' compensation and property and casualty insurance. We also have an internal service fund for health insurance, and active health insurance and retiree health insurance, but we're not going to talk about those today. But in terms of workers' compensation, that was the first one that we decided to create this internal service fund. So back in 2007, we created it, and I'm not going to go into specifics on how the accounting of it worked, but suffice it to say, before we were paying claims out of the general fund. And I don't know, I'm sure you guys can imagine that claims do not necessarily happen the same amount every year, right? And sometimes they're like this, they're up and down, they fluctuate and so forth. And so, if you'll turn to the next page, and I certainly don't expect you to read this, but I might push you on some of these numbers later. You can see, and I don't have one of those little pointer things, but you can see each of those set of colors. This is one fiscal year, starting with fiscal 2007 and going all the way. This is fiscal 15 actually. And you can see kind of, if you just compare the same color line, in this example, let's just look at the green line, which represents claim expenses. So down here below the zero, because it's an expense, it's negative. You can see how the green line fluctuates. So those are our claim expenses. So before 2007, we were paying those out of the general fund. So trying to budget and project and how that's going to hit the general fund, a little bit difficult. It's hard to read the future. I haven't mastered that one yet. So what we did is we moved this to an internal service fund. And what that allowed us to do is, okay, we will take that smoothing. So if you calculate all these, and we'll look at it on the next slide in a second, but if you calculated all these claim expenses over these years and you averaged them, well, let's try to put that average in the general fund, and then that way each year, if expenses were less this year, we have more that accumulates in the internal service fund. The next year it might have been more accumulated. Then you have a bad year, you have the money there to pay for it, but you haven't affected the general fund again. Okay, so it keeps your general fund somewhat intact. And so let's look at the next page. I think it'll summarize it nicely. So at the end of fiscal 15, we had 9 fiscal years, and our total net claim expense in those 9 years was a little over $2 million. This is for workers' comp. The average was $224. So $224 388. But these are, the property and casualty numbers are a little bit more than this, than workers' comp. So what it did is, can you go back one slide? Okay, so you look here, you can't see this, but it's total city premiums. This is how much was hitting the general fund in these years. So in 2008, we had a $1.1 million hitting the general fund for claims. Now keep in mind, those net claim expenses and so forth, that's going to be after revenues and all that kind of stuff. But look what it was the last 2 years, 500, 500, and it'll be 500 again, more than likely. That'll be for 16. We were able to basically take it from 1.1 million, and it even went up other years, to now it's only a $500,000 hit on the general fund. In addition to that, we funded, every year we have an actuarial study done on risk management, both risk management, workers' comp and property casualty. We have funded the outstanding liability. So at the end of the year, we have a liability for claims we haven't paid, we're gonna have to pay out, okay? We have funded that liability 100% by doing this. So for workers' comp, let's say it's $700,000, $800,000 at the end of 16, it's 100% funded by having this. So, and we've now lowered the cost and streamlined the hidden general fund. So it's been good for us. So it worked out so well with workers' comp. If we go on to property and casualty, it works the same way. You will see the fluctuation. I don't know what happened there. Did the bulb go out? Anyway, you'll see the fluctuation again with property casualty, and the numbers here over the 8 fiscal years we've done it are 3.5 million with an average of $400,000. But if you look at again the hit to the general fund in fiscal 2008, oh, you know what? That's what I think. I apologize. That 1.1 million. I think we went forward to property casualty instead of back to workers' comp, but it's the same process. So that's what went to the 500,000. The workers' comp were different numbers, but it worked the same way. So, is something wrong? So the benefits of using internal service funds, it allows pre-funding of estimated outstanding claims. So as we're saying, we have those claims at the end of the year. We're able to pre-fund those, the short and long-term liabilities, and it can smooth potential fluctuating claims activity from year to year that hit the general fund. So in summary, we go to the last page of the slide. Overall, these are 4 things that stand out, I think, that makes the City of Hoover's budgeting process, it's conservative. Again, we've maintained and now a AAA rating the Standards & Poor's, and I feel like we're doing these things puts us ahead of most all other municipal governments. And so, just in summary, it's conservative, it's worst case scenario, we try to build the safety nets, we remove the one-time budget items easily, it facilitates a broad-based view of budget requests from departments, it ensures the funding is available when the bill comes due, it maintains a strong financial position, it prevents overextending our commitments, pre-funds these outstanding claims liability, and smooths expenditures to the general fund. So, with that being said, are there any questions on any of that?
Yes, ma'am, Dr. Lopez. First, thank you. Technology has come a long way since 2004. Are these PowerPoints going to be available to the council later on for us to peruse?
I certainly could make them available.
Okay. You were talking about fleet management. Are the work they do and the parts they use, are they charged back to the various departments?
We don't have an internal service fund in charge of that, but we do have departments in that fund, so they get charged. Each department gets charged for it, yes.
What levels of unearmarked reserves do we need to maintain, in your opinion, to maintain our bond ratings that we currently enjoy?
Well, that's a good question. There's no hard and fast rule. But we feel like, I personally feel like a third, focusing on the general fund, I feel like a third of our general fund revenues, now we're not quite there yet because our revenues grew so much the last couple of years. And so in my mind, we may want to look at, instead of $100,000 in addition in the next few years, maybe upping that a little bit. But there's no hard and fast rule, so.
So we figure we're a couple $1 million, $4 million from truing up where you were going to
So
be.
our projection for 2017 is 111 million. So a third of
Big?
that, pardon me,
Big?
million. Did I say
Oh,
million?
okay.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't figured out to get to the billion yet, but we'll work on that.
One last thing, risk management. You used the term that these dollars were hidden in the general fund. They're hidden pretty well because in 12 years, I haven't been able to find, how it's funded or the expenses that come out of there unless we're doing a budget amendment to add funds to that. Is there a reason why that information is supposed to be held?
The information as far as,
Risk management dollars that are spent.
no, because these graphs I just showed you are showing that they're paid actually out, the payments, the claims are paid out of the internal service fund. And the general fund, we're just saying, okay, for instance, property and casualty, $500,000. So we're gonna divide that by 12 and make a transfer to the internal service fund. But the payments come out of that internal service fund, and those are gonna be, and true numbers, and in our financial report each year, the CAPR, it actually has a statement that shows what only occurs for the workers' comp, revenue, expenses, and so forth, and property and casualty, all the internal service
I would
funds.
assume some of the issues are held because of federal medical law, not being able to release names.
Oh, you're talking about
associated with
specifics.
conditions, Yes.
Oh, well.
You know, how much individual claims are costing, things like that.
Yeah, I don't, we should certainly be able to provide any kind of broad information, sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Lyman, one quick question. Do you think we'll be able to have these slides available on the web at all? PowerPoint?
If that's requested, I can certainly do that. Anything else as far as that, and we'll move to some specifics on the 17 kind of overall. I just want to make note of that.
So just thinking of a way to explain this, because we've had this discussion several times about government accounting, how you can't capitalize, and that's how that's, so it ends up being really spiky, and it tends to make you more borrow more, and things like that. This conservative approach that we take, you could explain this by saying we've responded to that by kind of pre-funding things, and that's how we deal with the capitalization problem in government spending. Is that kind of?
Sure, that's a good way to look at it. It's obviously, we don't have, even though we're transferring money over to capital projects funds, we don't have to approve all that every year, but we can have it there when something does happen. And the same thing with the internal service funds. It's truly doing the exact thing that you're talking about. We're putting that money aside for when it does happen or when it is needed. So, yeah. You can open up the PowerPoint now. I mean, the Acrobat file. Okay, so I've given you guys this first page, so because I didn't know if you'd be able to read it up here. If you took our entire budget, so right now this represents all requests. If you took our entire budget, this is for fiscal 17, and you put it on one page, this would be the page. This summarizes everything. And just to kind of give you a little bit of overview of the budget process in specifics, as I mentioned before, we have the general fund. Multiple funds roll into the general fund, but we also have, you'll see this column right here, special revenue funds. And special revenue funds are funds that basically we get the funding, but they can only be spent on certain items. For instance, gas tax funds, court corrections fund, E911 funds. And so because we can't just spend them on anything, we put them separate from the general fund, which can be spent on general items. And we separate them this way because if we have them consolidated, it would look like we had a lot more money to spend on anything than we do, and so we have them separated here. And so you don't see the detail behind this, because in reality, the detail of our entire budget could probably be this thick, but we probably have 10 to 15 special revenue funds that are rolling into this column of special revenue fund. And then we have capital projects fund. And basically, this is where we're making that transfer to the capital projects fund. We also have some funds dealing with any ALDOT grants itself too that roll into this, but those really wash to zero because the ALDOT portion, we get the money in, we spend the money, so that's always washed to zero. So this is where we're gonna, for the most part, any item or project that's gonna be $50,000 or more is gonna come out of the capital projects fund. For the most part, vehicles, we look at those as a whole versus one vehicle, because they can cost so much at times. And for the most part, unless we have a grant or some other funding source, we fund those out of the capital project fund as well. And then we have proprietary funds. Proprietary funds are gonna be the sewer enterprise fund, and then the other funds that are proprietary funds are the internal service funds that I mentioned previously. So that just kind of gives you an idea of, if you ever see the summary sheet, that's kind of what's rolling into it. Now, in terms of specifics, looking down, we're going to focus on the general fund, unless you guys have questions about the others. I would be happy to answer those. You will see for fiscal 17, we are, right now, our revenue projection is $111 million. You might want to point to that. For the general fund. And we're going to look at some comparatives with 16 here in a minute, but I'll just go over this real quick. In terms of our expenses, we have basically 4 categories of expenses. We have salary and benefits, which here is listed as personnel. We have operating expenses, we have capital expenses, and then we have what I call other uses of funds. Other uses of funds are going to include debt service, contribution to the schools, rebates on any type of sales tax rebate that we've done. So you'll see there for the general fund, our all requests, and remember we haven't made cuts for the requests yet. $62.5 million personnel expenses, $32 million for operating capital, $780,000. Debt service at $13.3 million. There's going to be a chart we'll look at in a little bit. You'll see this is kind of a hit for us this year. It's somewhat of a one-time hit, partial of it, with the $80 million debt financing. It caused our general fund debt payment in fiscal 17 alone to go up about $4.3 million. It's a big hit on the general fund. So for fiscal 17, we'll look at that in a second. As far as education, right now what we have proposed in here is to make a contribution to the schools of the $5 million. So that's in the all requests. And then if you go on down, transfers out, $3.5 million. And let me make this one other statement about the $5 million. That would also include the building permit fee part of that is in that $5 million. But on transfers out, if you remember, we talked about some of those special revenue funds. So, for instance, the E911 and the court corrections in particular, we can fund jail and courts out of that fund, but guess what? It doesn't cover all the expenses. So we have to make a transfer from the general fund to that special revenue fund to make it whole. So that's what these transfers are. Mostly, these transfers are to those special revenue funds to make them whole if expenditures for one, if it was more than what we brought in the special revenue fund.
Ms. Lopez?
Sure.
That $5 million for education, is that a fluctuating amount, meaning that the front door fees change? Will it be a consistent amount regardless of how that looks?
It's my understanding that that is the number that, should it be approved and should it go through, that's the number that we're committed to giving. We would equalize that out, and that would include whatever the permits ended up being.
And does that also include the SROs and that $5 million?
Well, the city's position, the mayor's position on that is the SROs are a public safety function at this point, and so that's not considered anything as SROs. That's completely a contribution.
Okay. And currently, how is that handled? Initially, school had to divvy money back out in a sense, and I know that was changed by the prior administration and take the SRO was completely off the table, but, is the city consuming the entire amount of cost? So there's no repositioning money going in and out of schools from the city?
That is correct.
Okay.
The city is assuming 100% of those costs.
If I could elaborate from a policy standpoint, Murphy, the mayor's position is that is just another police beat.
Okay.
Those are, what Dr. Murphy, 14,000 roughly Hoover citizens that are gonna be protected whether they're inside a school building or at their home or on the roadways. So we just see that as just another function of the police department to protect those children.
Right, and I don't want to play with numbers here at all, but I guess we're looking at, if you look at the $5 million itself, and then you look at the $2 million, there'll be seven. I'm not using that as playing with numbers, but
There'll be
comparable.
Right, there'll be more resources. We actually have a meeting with Dr. Murphy later this month to try to identify some additional efficiencies and support that we, so there'll be more resources dedicated to supporting Hoover City Schools over and above the $5 million cash.
Okay.
If I could add to that, I agree with Mr. Murphy on that. I think that's a very important point, that any dollar committed to the schools from the city reduces a dollar from their bottom line.
That's right.
So I think that's a very valid point, that $2 million, I agree, it's a public safety issue, but it's also, and I think we all agree that that's a service that we're not willing to budge on. No one in this community is. So it's important to note that yes, it's a public safety expense, but yes, it's an expense that we're taking off their bottom line. So in essence, it is a contribution. So I want to make sure we make that known, that
We're tracking.
this number is probably closer to 7 million.
Well, keep in mind, we were already, it was 50/50, so their
Right.
cost was only half of that, so, in the past.
For SRO officers.
Yes. It was a 50% building.
We paid about just shy of $900,000, so I guess that total cost then was 1.8.
Yes, it was closer, there were, yes, that's correct.
And I'm sorry, perhaps I'm out of order, I
No,
apologize.
please, go ahead, please.
Okay.
There were, you guys had some of special events that you guys would want us to have police presence, and those would be billed at 100%, but all the officers themselves and the cost of the SROs, that was 50/50, yes.
Mr. Light, your point's well taken. We will be able to track all the support to the school system, both cash and in kind, in whatever form that might take.
How are special events budgeted, anticipating to be budgeted in the upcoming budget?
As they relate to, for the city as a whole,
For the city, would the city still gonna absorb that 100%?
I'm not sure that any of those conversations, when we took away that billing, we're not billing them, just to my knowledge, for anything at this point, so.
Are you thinking about police and fire, Mr. Smith?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, both of those departmental budgets have in their overtime requests the necessary funds to continue to support special events.
But we're not gonna pass any of that off to the school.
There hasn't been any discussion about that.
Dr. Lopez, one other quick question. You had indicated that we're anticipating moving $14 million from the last fiscal year to the current, but in the capital projects fund, it only shows a little over $4.5 million.
Actually, that number represents revenues. If you look further down,
Okay.
and I have 13 here, and the reason for 13 is, again, we hadn't finished the year, and we were saying between 13 and 14, it looks like it's gonna be closer to 14 now. But it shows, because what's gonna happen, it's gonna be the beginning of the fund balance for 17. And that's where that reflects.
Is the end fund balance inclusive of the 31, 32 million of unearmarked reserves?
You'll see the 32 million right here for the general fund,
Okay.
and this would be where the other estimate is. And that number will be, it won't be exactly 14, it's gonna fluctuate because we also had projects that ended in fiscal 16, and those amounts, that there'll be a little bit of surplus from those projects. So that number will be in excess of 14 million.
But we're still gonna have our 32 at the end of the year.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, so let's look at the next page. I know you guys don't have it, but it's up here. see here, this is kind of a comparative with 16, and we have compared it in two ways. The first column there represents the fiscal 16 original budget. So if we compare that, obviously, again, it's the fiscal 17 all requests, so these numbers will change and go down. But if we compare that, we have one comparison to the 16 original budget, and then also that second column is the 16 unaudited actual. So that, because it's unaudited, there's a chance some of those numbers could change, but not much at this point. So we take these same broad categories that we just looked at, and we look at it comparatively here. And then the fourth column gives you the difference between the original budget in 16 to the all requests for 17. And then the last column compares the 16 actual with the 17 all requests. And you'll see if you look at revenue, so in terms of revenue, in terms of what we actually brought in, we actually are bringing in about almost 111.4 million. Well, we're only budgeting 111 million. Keep in mind, we have some revenues that are considered kind of one-time hits, and they're not necessarily going to be something we hit every year. We don't want to count on them and assume that's going to happen. So the projection reflects that. But at the same time, we are budgeting almost $5 million more than what we budgeted in the 16 original budget, that 4.8 million that's in at the top there. In terms of our personnel increases, this includes all the new position requests and upgrades and that sort of thing. Again, we still have to go through those and make cuts. We're presenting to you everything that was requested. So our fiscal 16 original budget was 57.8 million. We spent 55.7 million. Again, remember that number one thing we talked about. You're never going to have full employment probably, so there's going to be some excess and all that. And then right now our 62.5 million represents the general fund payroll costs. As you'll see on another slide, the payroll costs overall are a little bit more, but that's because some positions are funded from special revenue funds or proprietary funds. And then you can see the operating differences there, the capital differences, debt service. I just want to focus on that line for a second. You will see in 2016 it was just over $9 million, and this is not a number that's going to change because we have to pay it. It's considered mandatory spending, so as opposed to discretionary spending. So 13.3 million. So that $4.2 million is a hit for us in the general fund this year. That, keep in mind, we got pretty much level revenue in terms of actual, but we're still going to have to pay this additional $4.2 million related to that debt. And just real quick to just let me show you that. Can you go two pages down real quick? This graph shows you the annual debt service payments for the general fund, and I added it. The beginning line is fiscal 2016, and that's where we were with the $9 million. So you can see that 1 year, 13.4 million in 2017 is going to spike, a big spike. But next year we're going to realize we're going to have some of that savings. It's going to level out a little bit. We're going to save a little bit. So it won't be 13.4. It's going to be closer to 12 million, just under 12. It'll be 11 something. And then it's going to be that way for a little while. But then we get to the point, and I think that's like 2022 or 2023. Then it goes down to like 6.5 million or something like that. So I want to give you kind of that picture of what it's going to look like for the future in terms of the debt. So can we go back now to two slides? One more. Can you scroll down just a tad? Okay, thanks. And then education, we talked about that just now. We had budgeted $2 million in the original budget last year. With the amended budget, it was 2.5 because we took into account the building permit, the front door permit fees. This year, we'll put that at $5 million. You'll see those differences. Transfers out, we talked about that. And then the rebates, that's going to be special items rebates. It's going to be those sales tax agreements where we're rebating money to get people to do certain things. So overall, you can see that when compared to the original budget, we right now have about $8.5 million difference from our budgeted 100,000 increase that we need to make up, and we'll be working on how we're going to do that for this year. That's what with these numbers and this all request, that's where we stand right now. So obviously that's why we have to make changes before you guys have a budget to adopt.
Can I ask one more question about the unaudited actual for education? You said that includes the front door fees that the city added. Now, didn't the city also, wanted to cover the SROs last year, so is that not added in
But keep in mind, we just
Did we just absorb
absorb
that?
This is
Okay.
contributions to the
here?
school.
So the schools have never paid us for that, and we just absorbed it. We didn't have to refund it.
They, in the past, it showed in our revenue line. They would write us a check, so that was revenue to us. These are the expenses that we're contributing to them.
Yeah.
So basically, keep in mind, so that revenue number, somewhere in there, our revenue number decreased because we were not gonna get that $1 million back from them, so. Okay, so I wanted to quickly, too, on the next page, if there weren't any other questions on that, just to show you, I think obviously the biggest line item in our budget is payroll, as it is for a lot of people. And I wanted to kind of show you how that payroll change with all requests, has changed from the fiscal 16 original budget. So you'll see, remember, this is gonna represent all funds, so where we were looking at numbers, folks in the general fund a little bit earlier, you can see that we started, our fiscal 2016 original budget was $63.6 million. And the line items here, and I'm just gonna hit the big items, the changes here, we have a little bit of retirement increase, and that's based on the rates the state gives us. We have to pay those. The big change in reality is gonna be health insurance. Our health insurance costs this year. We are proposing, the $2.2 million there. We are proposing that right now, the city employees' contribution only comes out on 24 pay periods. We're proposing to just do that on all 26 pay periods. It's about $127,000 as a whole that saves the city from that. There's nothing else, no other increases built into this budget right now that we would pass on to the employees. Our step increases, almost $900,000, so that's our normal raises for staff during the year. That's about what that costs. Right now, we do not have a COLA in these numbers. New positions and upgrades, so forth, they total a little over almost $1.4 million. We will be adjusting those down, obviously, not doing all of those requests, and then other payroll items that we budget every year. So basically, right now, with the all requests, the change from the fiscal 16 original budget is about $5 million.
This does not include a COLA for active or retired.
That's
At this time, we're still working to try to see what the possibilities are. So we have not ruled out a COLA or a retiree COLA, but it does not reflect it in what Dr. Lopez has right now.
And with that, I will entertain any questions you may have, or anything I did not answer that maybe you've always wondered.
You need to sharpen a pencil in the next few weeks, it looks like.
May I ask a question?
Well, I've got one, as far as the department budgets, are they, how close are they usually on their requests at the end of the year? Do most go over, do most have some left?
We try not to let anybody go over. That's the big
Requests
right
go
side
over.
of us. For the most part, obviously, there are two kind of sides to this. Our goal is that we would have some surplus, because if we don't let people go over on their budget, there should be some. It's hard to spend exactly.
Sure.
At the same time, in the past, at times, sometimes it's happened where we said, oh, we're gonna cut your budget back to what you spent. Well, that's kind of discouraging to a department, because it makes them want to spend stuff that maybe they don't need to. So there obviously are savings in the budget that they don't spend. That's why we can make that $14 million transfer. But, and again, some of that may be that something just doesn't come due this year, or they didn't get around to doing it, they'll have to do it next year. There could be a multitude of reasons why some of that didn't get done. But in reality, operating, if you look at that sheet that I handed you, just look at the general fund, it's $32.8 million, but I have another sheet that ain't included in this presentation. When you look at garbage, when you look at the top 5 expenditures out of that $32.8 million, well, garbage is number 1. That's probably like $7 to $8 million of it. And then you have things like utilities, so we want to pay the bill. And it's a lot of stuff that there's not really any wiggle room. But it's not to say there isn't some budget that would be left available here. Did that answer your question?
Yes, overall.
Ms. Lopez, and I don't have the prior questions in front of me. Has this been the highest expenditure received on budget hearings for the expenditure piece delivered? I see 153. Has that been the highest?
I'm sorry, where are you?
On the sheet that you put,
Okay.
it's 153 million for expenditures.
Oh, yes, this is going to be, for the governmental funds, that's correct. Yes,
Yes.
that's gonna be the highest for sure.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now I'm assuming you deliver that with the ability to be able to trim down somewhat, because it's dipping into the reserve quite a bit.
Yes, and keep in mind, when you're looking at, that's taking into account capital projects. We will trim
Okay.
capital projects to be able to be within the amount of fund balance and better. So that'll be a huge difference. And in terms of the general fund, we will trim those requests as well as possibly fund some of these one-time hits that are occurring in fiscal 17, maybe with a transfer back from the capital projects fund for that 1 year.
And that debt services of 13, 14 million dollars, I guess. That's subject to change over the next couple of years, right? Because, how's that process again? I mean, one will be dropping off, will we be picking more up, with the funding of the,
Yeah, can you put that, slide on the debt back up? So yes, in fiscal 18, it will go, the debt service, it will go from 13.4 million to 11, closer to 12 million. So that will be a drop. And then I believe it's fiscal 22 or 23, it will drop down to 6.5 million.
okay.
At that point, all the bonds will be paid off except for the $80 million.
That is correct.
And last question, that's based upon the projection of what the sports complex is scheduled to be now. I don't know what the change order process is looking like at this point. But do you see any fluctuation where that $6 million could be maybe $1 million more with the
The only way it would increase is if you borrowed more funds.
Okay, so we had our bank, okay, gotcha.
It's kind of like a mortgage,
Yeah,
obviously,
gotcha.
unless you took out an additional mortgage to cause that to increase.
What did the sports complex have? What was that first number there on the line? It's about 9?
Well, in this fiscal year, it added 4.3 million. Of course, the principal, well, actually, because of some debt premiums, it would be in the 60-something million dollar range, but then next year it'll be closer to the 12 million. So maybe almost $3 million then.
Okay, so out of that 12 million, or out of the 12 or 13, out of 4.5, or roughly 4.5 is dedicated to sport complex now.
That's the fiscal 2017 debt service related to that, yes. And that's a good point too. Another thing to keep in mind in this budget right now, the previous council, previous administration approved a pre-operating expense budget for the sport, SFM of about $1.2 million. That's another one-time hit that we weren't expecting that's in there. In addition, that's not in here right now because we need to have some meetings with them is once it opens, what specific operating do they need to get us through September 30th?
Any other questions from the committee? I am committed to keeping us on time. We have 2 minutes left until our police and dispatch. Dr. Murphy, do you have a question?
Well, first of all, I'd like to stand up out of respect for this council. This is my standing ovation to you and to our mayor. Thank you so much for being considerate of our schools. To go from 2.5 to, I realize budget proposed, to 5 million. Thank you on behalf of 14,000 students who are most deserving of this opportunity to have additional revenue. Thank you for the mindset that says that 14,000 students who gather in our schools every day are citizens and are entitled to that police support rather than sending us a bill for that. So I'm so grateful for the mindset and for the opportunities to collaborate. I'm so looking forward as the leader of our school district in a few days of sitting down with our mayor, Dr. Lopez, perhaps others, so that we can talk together about how we work together and continue to collaborate on behalf of our children and our school district. So this is my standing ovation to you. Thank you so much for being kind to our students, for being thoughtful about that. I look forward to other opportunities to talk about in kind, but let me tell you that my hand is not out. I want to work with you. I understand that we're not the only folks who are on your budget who deserve time and attention, and it's never been my mindset that we should not be thoughtful about police and fire and transportation and other things, but to also be an advocate for the children, and thank you, because today you've demonstrated being advocates for our children, and I'm most grateful.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Mr. Fulton, there will be time as we progress, so we'll take some questions, if that's okay, as time permits throughout the day. Dr. Lopez, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're at the top of the hour, so we'll invite Mr. Rice, okay with you, we'll invite Chief Exo and Ms. Williams down to share their story.
Thank you. Everybody well today?
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. First of all, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for allowing us to discuss our fiscal year 2017 budget with you this morning. I've got Executive Officer Andeka and our Administrative Service Manager, Ellen Williams, with us today. The entire Hoover Police Department is committed to maintaining a safe community for all of our citizens. And I'd like to briefly highlight some examples of positive numbers for 2016 compared to 2015. Our robberies down 19.6%, with a clearance rate of 71%, with a national average is anywhere between 25 and 30. Our burglaries this past year down 27.8%. Our thefts down 10.8%. Our break and enter of vehicles down 11%. I am so pleased to be part of this organization because I know that our people are committed and work hard every day to try to keep our community safe. And it's been a very tough year, obviously, for law enforcement around this country. But I would like to say for the Hoover community, there wasn't one time that there wasn't a national episode with the police from the Dallas to the Louisiana that we didn't have an outpouring of support from our community for bringing food, bringing goodies, having kids write letters, having parents call. And I know it's not like that everywhere in the country. I just want to say thank you to the Hoover community for what they've done. We have gotten you a handout that you received, and there's a summary for additional funding that we're asking for in this year's budget. First, you'll see 2 additional school resource officers, and those are reserve school resource officers. RSA, the Retirement System of Alabama, limits $30,000 per year salary. So 2 additional officers, which will be retired Hoover police officers, can work, and these individuals will be working in our elementary schools. Currently we have 17 schools. We've got 11 full-time SROs. We've got 2 sergeants that are SROs. And we've got 9 reserve officers. Those officers, because of limitations of 30 hours per week, or $30,000 a year, they work 3 times, 3 days a week, which would be 24 hours per week. That's the limitation. It gives us an opportunity with those 2 additional ones provide additional protection at our elementary schools. Currently, and we don't talk about where, but currently we do have particular schools that one SRO may be responsible for two. And of course, we look at the proximity of those schools when we allocate those, that manpower. Two additional will certainly help us. It would be $60,000 a year. There's no benefits attached to that, strictly the salary. We've got two officers that have retired in the past few months that would love to take part in that. Any questions about that?
Chief, talking about reserve officers being able to work, or retired officers being able to work as reserve officers, I've noticed at the library that we're paying, it appears, overtime for an officer to secure the front of the library. Is that a position that could go to a reserve with no benefits as well?
The problem there, of course, is the library's open, I think, approximately 69 hours a week. So we're talking about 24 hours a week per officer. It would require almost 3. That is something that Mr. Rice and the mayor and I have talked about, and we'll be talking about it with obviously the mayor's when he does his budget, but that really hasn't got a concrete answer yet. Okay. Next on the list, you'll see asking for 2 public safety call taker positions, and that would be for the public safety dispatch, something that we've talked about in the past, something that's utilized in other departments around the country. We just never have. Our public safety dispatch center, 2016, received 115,184 calls for service. Our public safety dispatcher training program lasts 25 weeks. Certifications, call taking, fire dispatch, police dispatch. All applicants must successfully complete our training program. You know, unfortunately, all applicants don't make it, and it's usually because of the police dispatch, which is very, very tough. We think it would be beneficial and cost effective when we talk about training for 25 weeks and salary. If we've got those special people that have the skills we think to be a great call taker and eventually have an opportunity to be as a promotion to get into the dispatch level itself, that we could hire those people at a reduced salary and use them obviously during our busiest call times, and then have the additional personnel there to actually help us with dispatching and trying to keep our officers safe. So again, it's something that we've discussed in the past. We've never tried to implement it, and we just think with everything that's going on today, as you see 116,000 calls for service, that's a lot of calls. It's a very, very busy place. 24 hours a day, 365, we're open, and it's just something that I think would benefit all of us if we could try it. Next, we're requesting an additional park ranger. Currently, park rangers, which are 2, patrol all city buildings, talking about City Hall, library, PSC, etc., and secure the buildings after hours. They patrol 32 city parks, and to be frank about it, I didn't know we had 32 city parks. And then, of course, when we talk about the additional facility this year next to the Met, additional responsibilities. They open sports facilities when they need to. They lock them down and close at night. They take care of the lights at some of the parks. They patrol for parking issues. They inspect and report any problems to the appropriate staff. They assist the public when they're driving around. They may be at the parks. We jump cars off. We go get gas. We take people home. They assist the police with traffic control at large scenes, special events, and they complete incident reports on issues occurring in our parks. Currently, they work 4 10-hour shifts. We've got 2. We've had 2 forever. And when you start thinking about our parks and Veterans Park and everything that takes place in the city right now, that's really an area that we probably semi-neglected, and expect those 2 guys to do a lot. And I think one additional right now, and that additional person would work 4 10s and would probably, we're looking at a Friday through Monday shift. Obviously, our weekends and our sport parks are very, very busy, and that would just give us that additional person. Yes, sir.
Chief,
Yes.
at the forks, what type, especially after Arlington, most of them have a time limit in which they can, people can show up there. It shuts down a certain time, I don't know. If not, it's 9, 6, 10 o'clock. They have a curfew. What criminal challenges do you have at the forks?
Well, obviously, summertime, when kids are out, a lot of kids hanging or meeting in parks after hours, and that does take a little additional time. I would say that we've been very, very fortunate over the years to not really have any, what I would say, major events in any parks. I know that Mr. Rice and Mayor Mercado and I have talked about trying to do some things in the park this year with some call boxes and things that I think are necessary, especially when we look at Veterans Park and everything that takes place there. And people run early morning, they run at night, and for safety's sake, I think call boxes is something that are necessary, and we're going to try to go in that direction. But again, Councilman, we've been very fortunate, I think, over the years to really not have any. Of course, we'll get some vandalism and those type of things, but when I talk about any what I would consider a real event, we've been fortunate, knock on wood, haven't had any. Okay. Next, we're asking for an additional animal control trapper position. Since January 1st, 16 through the year, we received 2,437 calls for service on some type of animal complaint. Currently, just like parks, we've got 2 animal control officers. They work 4 10-hour shifts per week. We have been hiring a trapper who is certified through the state of Alabama to trap our larger animals. In 2016, we had 96 calls where traps were actually set for large animals. Those would be coyotes, foxes, bobcats. We removed 37 animals this past year. He also responded to 87 calls where education to the homeowner resolved the issue without having to set a trap. He's maintained beaver traps at Veteran Park almost every week for the ongoing and recurring problem. He's removed over 9 to 10 beavers that I'm aware of. Weekly, he's monitoring the storm water pond of Baker Boulevard for the same problem, beavers. So far, we pretty much pay an average about $31,200 a year for the trapper, and that's obviously on a limited basis. We could hire additional animal control that would have to have the certifications the state of Alabama as a trapper, and we're talking about that salary. Of course, this doesn't include benefits, but that salary would be in the $33,000, $34,000 range. And I don't know if you guys hear about it, but obviously we do respond to a lot of coyote complaints. And a trapper, these guys do a lot of different things. He went to Star Lake right at the beginning when first security day. There was a ball of water moccasins right there, and you turn around, this guy's getting in the water to handle them, and it's like $31,000 a year, no way, buddy. But again, I think it would be advantageous if we could have somebody on staff, and again, not only would he be the trapper certification, but it would also give us the opportunity to have another animal control person. And again, we've had 2 animal control people for a very long time.
Chief,
Yes, sir.
what's the benefit of having someone on staff versus continuing to contract?
Well, I think the benefit of having on staff, in addition to the fact of having the trapper have the additional manpower to answer complaints, is the fact that now, if let's say, and I can remember there was a doctor that called me personally crying, lived off Patton Chapel Road because she saw her cat being taken away by a coyote. And the lady, when she called me, was hysterical. Obviously, the trapper doesn't live in Hoover, lives probably 60, 70 miles away, and he does other things. So having somebody on staff when we have a problem, that person would be our beck and call. He would be on call also that he would respond immediately, after hours, that type of thing. But again, not only the trapping aspect of it, but I see the fact that with the cost of service that we're getting now, I think having that additional person on staff would just be a benefit to us.
If I could ask one more question.
Yes, sir.
Are there opportunities, or maybe this is unprecedented, but is there an opportunity to share that position with other neighboring municipalities perhaps?
Haven't thought about it. I certainly think we could certainly talk about it, absolutely.
The same issues with coyotes and perhaps water moccasins and bobcats, I know, like to hang around Blue Cross.
They love it.
They love
Got a
it.
big picture one.
Yeah, but maybe there's an opportunity to share some shared services there with neighboring folks.
Yes, sir. Hadn't thought about that. Good idea.
Just one last question.
Sure.
To piggyback on Mr. Whita's point, can we even look at possibly, be a consultant for other cities if we bring on a full-time person? We may not have necessarily the same amount of needs, but instead of them paying for it in a consulting way, they could turn to us as a fee. I don't know, governmentally, we can do something like that. I hope I'm making sense on that.
Yeah, I'm still saying. Yeah, I mean, I think we can explore some, certainly explore some different options, absolutely. Thank you. Next, you'll see we've asking for two upgrades. One upgrade to a detective sergeant, and that position would be in our special investigations unit, primarily, which is drug related. Currently, we've got three individuals that work SIU, primarily again narcotics. Right now, this person is being supervised by a lieutenant, and that was due to a reassignment that we made back this past year. We felt like our school resource officers, we had one sergeant that was responsible for the 11 full-time SROs and the 9 part-time SROs, and felt like that span of control was absolutely just too much. So with the plan of trying to get another sergeant upgrade to go back to SIU, we felt like it was the time for us to go ahead and put an additional sergeant in our school resource officers, which we have 2 at the present time. And we're asking for an upgrade that would cost about $3,700 a year right now to upgrade that detective to a detective sergeant to work SIU. And again, it's not only narcotics complaints, we work prostitution complaints, we work anything, special investigations out of there. And right now, with the lieutenant doing, he's got other responsibilities too. It would just minimize span of control too. Something that when we did it, we had planned to hopefully get that position. So I'd appreciate if they would allocate that for us. The other is our courier. Our courier is the individual downstairs that if you walk in the front door of the police department, the first floor, is the person sitting behind the glass. That courier position has been a courier position for years. Those duties have changed a lot. We consider that more of an administrative one-level position. I would say probably 60, and of course Ms. Williams actually supervisor. I would say 60% probably for time now. It's more administrative work than courier work. So it's really just trying to really get her position to where she should be. You'll see next on there, building services. Our original carpenter in our dispatch center has been there since 2008. It's 2017. That center is a 24/7. It just needs a new carpet. It's $8,000, and it's just time for regular maintenance. The other on the building services is the UPS, uninterrupted power supply system replacement for the jail. It's $27,000. It completes the system replacement to operate jail doors during power outages and interruptions of power. And unfortunately, this past year, we've had some issues at the Public Safety Center with power outages, and we actually had some issues with opening some of those jail doors during those issues. Obviously not a good scenario, especially if something drastic happened in there, not only for the protection of our inmates, but certainly for the protection of our employees that are down there. But the $27,000 would be just another
leg,
yeah.
power leg. We had power outage at BSC. Those UPSs, it's kind of third leg or the second leg. You have the manpower from Alabama Power, then you get your generator. By the time the generator kicks in, you want to have that UPS is operating and keep things up and running. When we did evaluation on those, the jail UPSs, they're about 14 years old since we opened that jail. And of course, just keeping replacing the batteries in that system it gets to the point where you have to replace the whole system. So it is time for us to go ahead and replace the UPSs at the jail.
That was gonna be my question. So this is just to keep things going while the generator comes online?
That's correct. And if you have any issues with the generator, those UPSs at the jail, just like the dispatch center at the PSC, it will operate your system, your doors, your card readers for about 8 hours till you be able to troubleshoot what the problem is and try to fix it.
Is there only one generator covering that? I'm not familiar with the generator layout.
I wouldn't-
Public safety center.
Yeah, I think it's more than one generator to operate the whole building, but I'm not, it's, I think that would be Richard Mattis' question.
Chief,
Yes.
I don't know if this will be a question for you or for Ms. Fuquay, but I know within courts or fines or whatever, we turn a lot of money over to the state. Can any of those funds be used for this UPS?
I couldn't answer that question, that'd be
She
Ms.
might be
Fuquay.
able-
Yeah, that'd be Ms. Fuquay. So I know they've got court funds, I'm not sure what the legality is of what.
Yeah, what's the legality?
Yeah, got it.
Mr. Smith, you will hear some things in the court request, if we're able to get to it tomorrow, if we have to reschedule for weather, subsequent days, where we're proposing to use some of those special court funds, but my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Lopez, that has to be court operations. I don't know that we can extend that to jail. We can certainly investigate that. Our understanding right now, it has to be directly court related.
I was just wondering, because we do turn, or courts do turn a lot of money over to the state judicial system. I knew there were certain things that they could be paid for or be reimbursed. I didn't know if this was one of them.
We actually have, I'm sorry, we actually have the court corrections fund, but if you remember, the jail operating and court operating expenses are well in excess of what we get, and we're having to supplement that with the general fund anyway. So that fund that would be usable for that, there are no excess monies in there for that anyway, so.
What are the funds used for the federal prisoner program?
That's for.
Yeah, 70% of the funds from, that we receive from the United States Marshal Service for holding federal prisoners, 70% goes into the general fund.
The other 30?
30 goes to the police department to buy things for the jail.
Is any of that money available for something like this?
Absolutely.
Just thinking out loud.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
Before we leave the
Sure.
UPS, there is a UPS system now.
Yes, sir, it's
It's
14
just
14 years old, and we have replaced the battery a while back, but it gets to a point where the system is outdated, and just keep replacing the battery, it's not really doing or giving us the benefit that we need out of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Officer Aldecker to go through the information technology portion, please.
As you see in front of you, the information technology we have, due to the 911 telephone system upgrade and our public safety radio upgrade, annual maintenance fees of $147,000 that's going to be associated for this year budget. That's going to cover the fiber line that we have between City Hall and the PSC. It's going to also cover the backup system that we have at City Hall right here, in case if we have any issues at the PSC or the communication centers, they'd be able to come over here and we could transfer the 911 lines from the PSC straight to City Hall. And I mean, it's just maintenance, annual maintenance that we are required to have. The new recording system that came in with the phone system at City Hall and at the PSC as well, those are annual maintenance fee for it. But that is a total of that's $147,000. The second item is the camera storage at the jail. When we put our camera system at the jail, we had like, I think, 3 months worth of storage. But we found out that is a state mandated that you have to have a minimum of 18 months storage. We've done upgrade in the previous budget that brought us up to 9 months. And this one right here, it will bring us up to the state requirement of 18 months of storage of camera system. The jail door control system upgrade, that's also 14 years old system. The software and hardware, some of the hardware needs to be changed, and that's part of what we're asking in this budget. The pocket jet printers, those for our e-citations that we put on our police Tahoes for to scan your driver license. Also, that's software upgrade came in from the state, and the printer's about 6 years old, and it's time for us to replace all of them. They are thermal printers, they wear out quick, and the more you print out of them, just they get, it's time for them to replace it.
I guess when you scan that card, it's not to see if you won anything.
Sir?
It's not to see if you won anything. A couple of questions real quick on that. The $147,000, is that new money or does that include previous maintenance fees as well?
It include everything. It include
Okay.
everything that we have.
What were the previous maintenance costs?
I wouldn't have that.
I think that's all new money.
It's all new money.
Okay. And do the jailers wear body cams like the street officers do?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, you'll see next is the general recurring capital. We're asking to replace the generator, command bus, $25,000. It's 11 years old, and that purchase would come from our drug fund. We're also asking for 3 additional canines, $93,000, and that is for dogs, that is for training, that is for equipment, that is for veterinary care, that is food, and that may be a little bit high, but whatever money we're spending, if we're allocated those funds, would also come out of our drug fund. Currently, we have 6 dogs that we operate. We've got a black lab named Ava. She works narcotics. We have Charlie, who is a lab. It's an EOD combat dog. That dog was given to us by the military. It was in Iraq and Afghanistan. And the thing that we had to do with that dog and with Charlie, who's another, well, that was Charlie, and then Hank, who was also a combat veteran of the lab. The military trains their EOD dogs with hand signals. So they may send those dogs down 100 yards for roadside bombs and so forth. When we got those dogs, all they knew was the hand signal, so we had to put them back through our training and certification because we use a leash, obviously. The 3 dogs that we're asking for would be additional dual-purpose dogs. We say dual-purpose, those are patrol dogs and narcotics. That would be placed on each shift. Dogs are just a benefit to us, and I think again a nominal cost. We would be purchasing all of those things and out of our drug fund anyway, and just think it's a benefit for the whole police. Any questions about the dogs?
Chief Curl,
Yes.
how many canines do we have?
Right now we've got 6.
And it's is it 11-year mark on how long you want to keep? Is it a time period?
Generally, we've got one dog that we got from ATF, and that dog can work now in the city. He's 10, can work in the city. But as far as ATF, a lot of times we'll get requests. Let's say we do send dogs at the University of Alabama. They request for support for the Alabama home football games. That dog cannot leave the city now because it's 10. And as far as the certification with ATF, they said at 10 years old, time to retire. We're on the list right now to get another dog, a bomb dog from ATF, would be an EOD dog. So we've been waiting on. That dog, it's free. The only specifications are that if ATF requests that dog goes to the Super Bowl, or if that dog goes to football games or baseball games, expenses are paid by ATF, but they want you to at least help them when they need that type of support. Our dogs have gone when the president's been in New York, and they've had all the dignitaries. Our dog has been there to help sweep. Our dog's been a heck of a lot more places than I have when there's sporting events that I go to. But that's something that we hope that we again get another one. We're on the list.
So we get reimbursed most of the time for
No, anytime ATF requests us to go somewhere, they pay all the expenses.
Okay.
We pay nothing.
But no overage as far as revenue generation?
No, sir, it's not.
Okay.
That's just a bank.
Is the dog specific to a trainer or officer?
Yes. All of our dogs go home with the trainer. They live as the pet at the house, and they're just like we are. They come to work 8 hours a day, just like the handler.
So when the dog travels to out-of-state events, whatever, the officer has to go with the dog?
Yes, absolutely.
I would also add, just as a note, you guys are often incredibly generous with these dogs. The neighboring cities, other Shelby County Sheriff's Department cut their allocation to dogs, and I received a call from Oak Mountain High School asking would we be willing to perhaps let our dogs, and you guys were more than willing to do that.
Absolutely.
So very, very kind of you to be neighborly in that regard, and not expect anything in return.
No, sir. And I tell you, I think as a police department, it's our responsibility. We're all in this thing for the same deal. And it's our responsibility when neighboring cities have issues. If we are fortunate to have an expertise in something and they need it, we send it and we don't expect anything in return. I just think that's the right thing to do.
Chief, with 3 more dogs, what your requesting?
Yes, Hoover.
What about personnel?
Personnel, we've got personnel. We've got personnel chomping at the bits to be handlers. And we've also hired police officers from other cities that have been handlers in the past that would be very quickly come up to
But
speed.
there will be 3 less personnel somewhere else.
Well, they're still patrol, they're still working patrol. It's just, it's just an officer working his beat, he's got a dog in the back.
And it's an extra assignment they have.
Right. No future request for 3 personnel.
No, sir. I should have made myself clear, I apologize.
Yes.
Next page, you'll see fleet. We're asking to replace 8 of our police Tahoes for $375,000, and that's completely outfitted. In 2016 is the first year that Chevrolet offered the police package with a 4-wheel drive vehicle, and that's what we went to this past year. These 8 replacements, the average mileage right now is 110,000, and each vehicle is about 7.2 years old. I will say that when we start talking about the Tahoes, that we've been very, very pleased. Very few maintenance issues. The fact that we get 7, 8 years out of these vehicles, I think is fantastic. A 4-wheel drive with the inclement weather potentially happening, let's hope not, but tomorrow. The 4-wheel drive obviously is an asset to us. And I will say back in 2014, when we had the storm that we pretty much lost control in about 30 minutes between 11 and 11:30 that morning when that snow hit, I know of at least 14 police officers that had 4-wheel drive vehicles themselves, their own personal vehicles that they utilized. I know we took kids to Children's Hospital. I know we took doctors, ferry doctors and nurses to and from hospitals. I know we took, can't tell you how many elderly people off of interstate. And I can tell you from the school system, Dr. Murphy's not here, but the school system, I think we ended up having over 4,000 people, 4,000 kids spend the night in our schools. And I'm telling you, when you're talking about kids and teachers, medical issues, we need, whatever the situation was, but we didn't have enough 4-wheel drive vehicles to be able to get around. Of course, we had what we had, but to have those 14 officers with their own personal vehicles was really a lifesaver for us. And I'm very fortunate now, feel fortunate now that the police Tahoes can be 4-wheel drive. And again, over 7 years of service out of them, we're very, very satisfied with that. And again, if you look at our maintenance costs, very minimal during that period of time. And these would be strictly replacements. If you give us the 7 allocated, we'll be selling 7 to other police departments.
So how many do we have 100% 4-wheel drive? You say
No,
now?
sir. No, sir. No, sir.
How many do we have 100% approximately?
Approximately, I would say maybe about 20 or 25.
I would say 20, 25.
Yes, sir. About 20, 25 vehicles. Everything that we replaced last year was 4-wheel drive.
Is your goal then?
Eventually, yes, sir. On the patrol side, absolutely.
Chief, Mr. Green just got a new truck, if you want to add it to the list.
We'll call it, appreciate it.
4-wheel drive?
Chief, do you have an average, just a ballpark figure of how much you get per truck in surplus when you sell it on?
Yeah, obviously it depends upon year and mileage, but I would say that we're generally talking in that $10,000 range.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Is that the true value at that time with all the equipment added? Or-
Well, that's true value. Of course, we ask our fleet people to evaluate, and they know by looking at the records of what kind of, what, sometimes we sell those cars and there's some issues and they need some maintenance things, so he may reduce the price there, but I think it is a true value.
If you were to separate the light system and sell it separate, could you get additional funds?
It'd be tough because you're gonna have to include the manpower to remove all those emergency equipment out of that Tahoe, and you won't benefit selling it somewhere else because you're gonna have the bar light got holes in the ceiling to go inside in there, so it has to, it's cost effective for us to send it to another law enforcement agency and get it sold that way.
And again, I'll say that in the past, from council members have called us in the past and said, hey, I know so-and-so from a small police department in South Alabama. They need help. They can't afford new stuff. And again, when we sell the car completely outfitted like that, and I tell you, I've driven throughout the state of Alabama and I can tell our cars because all they've done is taken Hoover off and they've put another agency name. And, it's a benefit to those places, and when I say doing the right thing, it makes us feel good when there's 2- and 3-man police departments that come up here and they see our cars with 100,000 miles and they sit there and look at us and say, this is better, these cars right here with 100,000 miles is better than anything that we've got at home. So, again, I think it's the right thing that we're doing, and we're able to benefit police departments all over the state of Alabama.
Chief, I don't know, I believe I'm the only person that was here during Katrina.
Yes, sir.
Maybe you want to quickly mention what you did for the city of Biloxi that was hit so hard.
Yeah, Biloxi was hit very, very hard. We ended up sending them cars and gave them cars back then because they didn't have much to drive. And again,
Substantial number too.
Substantial number, and it's just, again, it's just something that I think the city, that's what we do. That's what the city of Hoover is all about. If we can help, and we know that if things were bad here, we would be dependent upon other people to help us. The Dodge Charger, $35,000. That would be, we've got a Dodge Charger right now. Some of our detectives drive them, and that'd be a replacement vehicle. That vehicle right now has got 100 and some odd thousand miles. What year was that? 2008. So if you verify that, that's a 2008 vehicle, which would be going on 9 years.
What's the purpose of the Charger versus another Tahoe?
Being a detective, sometimes the Tahoes, even though they may be different colors, kind of stand out. Detective, depending upon the type of assignment, depending upon the area that they're driving. Yeah, just cars, just kind of maybe fit in just a little bit better places that they're going.
How's the maintenance been on that Charger?
Been really good. Yeah, been really good. Next is F-250 crew cab. It'd be $66,000 completely outfitted, and that would be if we ended up getting the additional animal control trapper position on a full-time basis. And again, after talking to you guys and this, what Mr. Ladd said too, we can, like I said, we can certainly look at, talking and also you, Mr. Murphy, talking to other cities and see if we can come up with something. But obviously, if there was an additional person, we'd have to have additional vehicle for that person. We got a special events trailer. It's an Carlos Victoria trailer. About $6,000. It's just old and beat up. It's just time to replace it. The radio system in our mobile command bus, because of our radio upgrade, it just mandated that we have to change that radio system out in the command bus. Talking about $30,000, and we've got 2 SRO police Tahoes that need replacing also. The last thing on there, you'll see the fleet funding request. We had 2 police officers this past year that have been up on the interstate working accidents, and 2 different occasions, a drunk driver plowed in to our car, and thank goodness the officer wasn't in it. Nobody was injured, other than both Tahoes were totaled. And the problem is when we got the money from insurance, we're short about $20,000 per vehicle to be able to purchase new. So we're asking for an additional $40,000 to replace those 2 Tahoes that were totaled out on the interstate. Again, very fortunate that those people, they did go to jail, but thank God they did not hurt anybody or kill one of our folks up there. Very dangerous, as you well know. That really open for questions. These are requests that I think are needs, not wants. We tried to minimize our requests this year, and I hope that council and mayor see fit to give us the majority of what we're asking for.
Chief, have you totaled this amount requesting yet?
I personally have not.
Which one?
The entire.
Tire? No, we have not. I'm sorry. Ms. Williams, you have the floor.
Chief, the radio replacement for the command bus, was that not included in the radio system upgrade?
No, sir, that was not. It was an oversight. And 5 radios, we have 5 stations to dispatch out of the mobile command bus, and differently that's a needed for us to replace it.
Go back to that camera system with storage, the 84 terabytes. Is that to bring it to 84 terabytes? Or is that 84 additional terabytes?
That's 80. That's additional 80 to bring it up to 18 months worth of storage.
That's a pretty good deal.
Yes.
Another need I know that still exists, and we talked about it a little bit earlier in the year, is the need for a training facility.
Yes.
That's not in your proposal, so where do you stand in?
Well, I actually communicated with the mayor the other day a little bit about it, and I'm hoping that he and I will be talking again very shortly, and possibly something that when he submits his budget, that we can come up with something. That is something that is a priority for us. That's what we're talking about, the funding issue. But I think what makes a good police officer, and the reason I think that we stand out, is the fact that A, we try to hire the best qualified person that we can, and B, is the continued training, especially in today's society, that you're training your people properly. And I think overall that it shows in the type of officers that we have. So that's something, yes, that is something that's a problem.
Chief, so far, you're still training at the same facility?
No, we're no longer.
I knew you.
Yeah, no
We're
longer.
moving out.
We're just kind of training anywhere we can. Yeah, we're down at Public Safety Center, just kind of taking areas that we can. We've talked to Homewood. We're using some of their facilities that they've got. So it's something that is a priority, and I'm hoping that we can possibly get something done during this fiscal year.
I think I've seen Pelham training at the old elementary school there on Highway 31 that has since relocated. Chief, the last time you gave a personnel exam, how many applicants did you have show up?
We generally have over 100 that show up. This is still a place that a lot of people want to work, and that makes us feel good. It makes us feel like that people want to be part of our organization. And I am, right now to say that when we are giving our tests, a lot of people around the country are talking about that they're having problems finding qualified applicants, and I can surely tell you that we're not right now, and we certainly would never think about reducing what we're asking for in men and women that we hire, because again, I think that's the most important thing right now, is to hire the right person.
Chief, I have a couple of questions that
Yes.
aren't on your request.
Not a problem.
How many helicopters do we own?
You have 3?
3?
Yes.
What's the purpose of all 3 helicopters?
Well, the 3, those came when Jefferson County was going through their crisis, and the mayor at the time, myself, met with the sheriff. The sheriff asked if we would take over their helicopters. If we didn't, they were probably going to end up going to somewhere in South Alabama, so we would never be able to get them back. We have budgeted in the past we've always budgeted strictly drug funds to pay for the helicopters. We budgeted in the past about $150,000 a year. Our budget request this year will be right about $75,000, because the sheriff now has money that he can supplement, and understands that he's going to have to supplement if we're going to continue doing it. There have been benefits of having them. We do use them on patrol flights. We do use them for missing persons. We do get calls. Shelby County used to call us quite often. Shelby County now has their own helicopter, but sometimes it's down and they call for help. I know that our helicopter was the first one to spot the Colonial Pipeline fire when it started. No one really knew exactly where it was until we got up and pinpointed exactly where it was. We also flew the Colonial Pipeline in Shelby County when they had the spill to be able to get up and kind of pinpoint where some of the issues were. Again, it's something that I think if it's done at a $75,000 max coming from the city of Hoover, and that money's coming from our drug funds, I think it's something that we do get a benefit. And again, I would say that it's a benefit, but we have to have the sheriff and the sheriff's department paying their fair share, because we pretty much took it over when they were in need. And I felt like at the time, and the mayor felt like at the time, that would be the right thing to do to try to keep it in the Jefferson County, Shelby County area, because again, if it left, it would have gone to South Alabama, never returned. Obviously, there's aviation units in Tuscaloosa. They run the sheriff's department, the city run them. Shelby County's got one now, and we've reduced our flying times this past year, really to reduce the funding that we were paying. Again, I thought $150,000 was getting too much, and you know, there are maintenance costs associated with any type of aircraft, and we sure as heck are not going to send our people up unless we know it's maintained properly.
So all three, in your opinion, are needed?
I'm not saying all three are needed. We don't fly all three at one time. Some of them have been maintained better when we got them, because all of them, two of them were surplus military, and one came from the Kansas City Police Department that were flying. They ended up getting new ones, and then it was just given away, and it came here. When we say do all three of them necessary, I wouldn't say no, not all three of them necessary, but we've got them, and there's really no, you know, if one is already maintained a little bit better than the other one, you're not really spending a lot of money on one particular one. When we got the one from Kansas City, we actually got some additional parts that they sent with it, which were very expensive things that would minimize cost as it goes.
Last question, can you speak a little bit on our efforts to be proactive on combating the drug epidemic in our society?
Yes, sir. We obviously the heroin overdoses, and I would say that's the drug epidemic today. The heroin epidemic is not only a problem, you know, in Alabama, Jefferson County, Shelby County, but it's a problem in every city in America, unfortunately. We have worked very, very closely with the Drug Enforcement Administration, with DEA. Anytime that we have a drug overdose, we call them. They investigate with us. We know that by dealing with them, we know that if there's a problem in Hoover, could be the same dealer that's given our folks the heroin, that could be on the other side of Birmingham that we wouldn't know. DEA, being a federal organization who's working all over the state of Alabama, has those contacts. We look for similar phone numbers. We look whatever we can do. We're dealing with the U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance, looking at, there's been, I would say, a couple of successful programs in other parts of the country that the U.S. Attorney is looking at. We've been dealing with her and trying to see if those programs would fit into our community. We're involved with the police officer of the Compact 2020, which is Shelby County. We have an officer that works there every day. That is something that the county manager came up with, and there's several police departments, including ourselves in Alabaster and Pelham and Helena, that are working with Shelby County to try to combat the epidemic. So I would say that we've been very proactive. We work with the Hoover School Foundation to try to educate, and it takes a lot of education. I've been a policeman for 30 some odd years, and I've never seen anything take hold like this. And it's all because of the prescription pill situation. When you got those prescription pills and people that get hooked, that want to buy them, they become so expensive on the street that heroin, most of it's coming out of Mexico now, the heroin is so cheap
so much cheaper than the pill. And, you know, you can take heroin, you don't have to inject it, you can snort heroin. You know, I can't imagine taking a needle and injecting. Unfortunately, the majority of our fatalities this past year, which number 10, all were injecting heroin. But the dealer would say, hey, instead of paying X amount of dollars for this pill, I'd say this heroin a lot cheaper, it's going to be better high. And they say the high is better. I don't know. But they say it is, and obviously it is when you see what's taking place in the country. So, again, I think we are taking proactive measures. I wish I could say we have a recipe to combat it and stop it. And if I did, it would be great. But no one, I don't think, has found that recipe anywhere in the country yet. Unfortunately, there's so much that's coming into America on a daily basis that the supply is unending and the demand is stronger than ever. And I do believe that it's probably going to get worse before it ever gets better. We've been taking statistics now for 5 years, and this past year we ended up, as far as our deaths, just about the same, but we ended up having more saves, and we certainly thank the Hoover Fire Department for bringing their Narcan. Narcan we call the miracle drug, and you can have somebody that's about to be another statistic, and you pop them with that Narcan and it immediately brings them back. And
do police officers carry Narcan?
we haven't done it yet, and the reason we haven't been in a situation, thank goodness, that the fire department responds as quickly as they do. A lot of times we've gotten to a victim maybe quicker than the fire department. We may start CPR, but the fire department has always gotten there quick enough to be able to Narcan them back. We've never lost one because of that issue. And the fact that, you know, we're not that rural, that right now we just haven't done it just because of the type of job that the fire department's done.
But I think the officers in Shelby County, you're talking about 2025, I think they're all now operating with Narcan.
Yeah.
Like bulletproof vests.
And again, more of a rural area, and being able to have that paramedic respond that quickly. But again, as things go, we'll certainly monitor it. If we think we need to, we certainly will.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Chief, in that same vein, as far as prevention, the drugs aren't there to use. That's also what we're doing. Have we looked at increasing our narcotics personnel? Not really right now. Our narcotics personnel do a very, very good job. You know, we take a lot of complaints. And please understand, the majority of our heroin is not coming from people that live in Hoover. It's coming from people that live outside of Hoover. Our citizens are driving to other parts of the Birmingham metropolitan area the majority of the time. I'm not going to say every time, but I would say certainly the majority of the time to purchase it. What's amazing to me, and the fire department can certainly give the type of statistics, I can't tell you how many times people that don't live in Hoover that we run on overdoses because someone will drive to certain parts of the Birmingham metro area, will purchase heroin, they will inject it coming down I-65, and I can't tell you how many times they pull off at Alford Avenue because there's two people in the car and one person is overdosing, and we end up responding. Those are not Hoover citizens, but we're certainly responding to them. So it just shows you the type of hook that this stuff has. People can't wait, they can't even wait till they get home. They're injecting this stuff in a needle coming down the interstate. And again, that Alford Avenue, for some unknown reason, has been a spot that we've had several overdoses this past year. So again, our people are doing everything we can to combat it. I think our relationship with the DEA has certainly been very, very helpful to us. And again, we're doing everything we can to put people in jail for it.
I think an increased number of working out might be a thought.
Okay.
Keep on the back burner if you would.
I would.
Because with this increased number, we need to increase personnel on the side.
Okay.
Just personnel or
Yeah. If there's no other, any other questions?
Yeah, any others?
Again, I appreciate the opportunity to come before you today, and certainly if you have any additional questions, please reach out to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Very well done. We've got about 5 or 6 minutes here before the top of the hour, when we get to our next segment. Mr. Fulton, I know you have a question. We would entertain that, or a comment, perhaps it was about.
Well, since the chief is here, Chief, how are you on patrol officers? Do you feel you have an adequate number at this time?
Well, I want to thank you because I know you were certainly a proponent on the last
the last
Well,
go-round.
I was concerned that maybe you needed another,
Yeah.
what was it? You said you could use 20.
Sure.
And you received 10.
10, yes.
And so I haven't forgotten
No, and I
about,
appreciate you, and you are, I consider you an advocate, and I thank you very much. I will tell you that with the additional 10, and then we had quite a few retirements this past year. So really, just been the last couple of months that I would say that we've actually been to where we are, manpower-wise. And I didn't think that we've been at full staff long enough with those additional 10 to come before the mayor and council and ask for any additional personnel right now. I think we just need to see this budget year, see how things go, and give us a little time frame to be able to manage and see how things go. And if we need more personnel by next year, I can assure you we'll be asking for
but
it.
there would be benefits from additional 10.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would certainly think there would be. Yes, sir. But again, I hope that we can get a good perspective after now that we've got full staff again.
The other quick question was on front door fees. Is that included in the $5 million for the schools?
That's correct, yes.
Well, now doesn't that fluctuate?
Yeah, we don't know what it is, but what we're saying is we'll true it up to the $5 million is the proposal.
Right. So it would be, if the front door fees came in a little under, it would still the full $5 million.
Sure.
Thank you.
We want to give Dr. Murphy a number to plan with and not a fluctuating amount.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
We're going to take a 5-minute break before we go to our next segment. So.
Thank y'all.
No, we're not going.